Moet jij even zitten?
Ja, ik ga wel even zitten.
Hi everyone, welcome here to the Innovation Café. Nice to see you all here. Hi to everybody watching online as well. For those who haven't been here before, we are a weekly networking event where we offer presentations on the subjects of design and or technology. And tonight, thanks to Dutch Design Foundation who made this edition possible, we have Tijs Gilde from Tijs Guilty who will be telling us more about how he's going to bring Dutch design to America. So please take the stage and enjoy the talk.
Hello. Yes, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm Tijs Gilde from Studio Guilty, and I have my studio at Sexy C, which is here in Eindhoven. This is our shared showroom, and behind this there is our workshop, and everybody has their own little office in the building. I share it with Onno Adriaanse, Tim Teven, Paul Koenen, and that's me, Studio Guilty. Quick introduction about my work. So it's kind of three pillars in the company, in the studio. There's scenography, which is kind of exhibition design or something around an exhibition. Product design, which I mostly develop products which I sell myself, so which I also produce myself, or like part of the product. And a part of it is creative direction, and that also has something to do with what I'm going to tell you about today. So part of the studio I want to leave a little bit behind. I want to tell you about my journey with my colleagues to America. So that's me on the right. Then there's Paul, and there's Tim, and there's Tom. Those guys are my colleagues here from Eindhoven. And so we've been visiting the US a couple of times. And after we decided to make the bold move to start a furniture brand in America. The furniture brand might be called Apparaat. So this is still a placeholder. So we've been looking for a name that sort of has that Dutch ring to it. Well, this is a Dutch word, so I guess it works. But also, the Americans have the word apparatus, which kind of means the same. But also, it has to sort of like conceive the idea of our fascination for machines and how the production industry is sort of our main driver in the products that we are going to design. So, a little bit of context. We are in North Carolina, of all places. And we got there because in North Carolina there is a place called High Point, and there is this furniture market, which is kind of the Dutch Design Week for the US. It's twice a year, and they claim it's much bigger than any other design fair. I have been, it's a busy place, but I can never say anything about those numbers. So the fact that this design week has been there for many years also has a lot of influence on the city of High Point. High Point is actually a city that its DNA is furniture. They say they are the furniture capital of the world. And in High Point there is a bunch of furniture manufacturers from years ago already. This is one of the furniture manufacturers that we've been to. As you can see, it has a lot of heritage, all of those chairs, and it was like much larger than this. We're hanging on the ceiling, and they have been producing chairs for a long time. But the thing in America is that after a certain time, they started moving production to China. And a lot of the furniture manufacturing there got kind of like, it washed away a little bit. So it's kind of like a little bit of forgotten glory, although this furniture market is there still, and some of the industry is there still. So the American local government, the High Point government, is interested in getting this industry back. They want to get it out of China, back to America, which also offers an opportunity for us. A little bit of more context. I'm going to explain, we're going to come back to it later also. So. This is John. He is actually the guy who invited us last year for the first time to America to come and see this fair. And this is his, well, he has this old mill, they call it a mill, it's like an old factory. And there's multiple of these in High Point. They were empty, and he is trying to sort of revive this whole industrial area so that the city of High Point is not only during that furniture fair, some place where a lot of people come, but people can experience design all year round, like in Eindhoven. So he kind of invited us and he said like, okay, you guys are designers, Dutch designers, I've been to Eindhoven, I like it, can we do something? And we said, well, we want to start a furniture brand. Let's see. So we've been talking about it a lot, back and forth, so okay, why should we start a furniture brand there? So main thing is, in New York there is Dutch design, it's visible, but in the North Carolinas it's not so much. And also, the market is not North Carolina. You have your company in North Carolina, but you sell in LA or in Texas or whatever. So it's like, it's a different market. It's not so locally, really. We had the idea to bring Dutch design to the US, and it kind of started because we sell some stuff to the US, but then you have import cost and then there's shipping cost, which actually makes our products twice as expensive. So we had the idea to start producing locally in America and then sell it in America. And also, American market is different because, you know, this table is this wide, but for Americans they need it twice as wide for some reason. Houses are bigger, chairs are wider, there's all kinds of differences. So, yeah, we decided to bring Dutch design to the US. And we figured, okay, if we're going to start a brand that says that they are Dutch design, we have to figure out what Dutch design is, or at least what it is to us. So we started to think about this. This is the pressure vase. Actually, Tim made that, one of my colleagues in Apparaat company. And if we look at this object, we think, okay, Dutch design is not so much about a form language than it is about a method. What I mean to say is this is made with a lot of pressure. It's like a normal steel tube, but it goes under a hydraulic press. And I guess Tim was experimenting with this press and a piece of metal. And then in the end, this form came out. And then he thought like, okay, what should this be? So then it became a vase. Instead of starting with the idea of making a vase and then starting experimenting how to make this vase. So the material experiment happens first, and then later on, you find sort of its function, which creates more surprising designs. This is one of my pieces also. So this is a piece I make from gravel, which is something I found in the flooring industry. They make floors out of this material. And I visit this factory and I think like, hey, I can do this in the third dimension. So you go into a factory, you look at what they do, you kind of like learn about it, you understand it, and then it makes you capable of putting that in a different context. So we think that working with the manufacturer and learning about how they manufacture things can be a big part of how you design things. So the experiment with the manufacturer may dictate sort of what the object is going to be. So then another thing I think is really an example of what we as a group do, and therefore might be sort of our vision of Dutch design, is working with a clear form language. So this is the work from Paul. This sheet metal is bended in a shape, and then there's these sheets slotted in, and the tension creates that it holds its shape together. So there's no screw, there's no glue, there's no notches, it's only the tension. So if he would start and add things that he has to screw or glue on, then sort of the design rule would not be intact anymore. So I try to define these sort of ideas or methodologies into three distinct design values. So experiments with industry, strong single gesture, and function follows form instead of form follows function, of course. Another example of this is Teun's work, Teun's Wets. This is made by filling up a balloon with polyurethane and then rotating it. And in the process, he just first filled the balloon with polyurethane and then clamped it, and then it hardened out and it had the shape left. So then he started thinking like, oh, maybe I can imprint something in it by clamping it while it hardens out. And then poof, there was a clock. So again, he didn't start with the idea of a clock, but the clock came from the idea. Function follows form instead of form follows function. The strong single gesture, I wanted to show another example of that. This is 2 ingredients, MDF, it's 3 ingredients. MDF, a jigsaw, paint. And as you see, he could like make any piece of furniture, like make a bench or a picnic table or whatever. It will all look the same because his methodology is so simple and similar. This is an example of Job's, Job van den Berg. He's been experimenting with industry. There's a machine that presses metal with a big rubber slab. And they make also the insides of your car door like this. So he experimented with the machine by putting a sheet of veneer below a piece of metal. And then some of the veneer, where the nuts are and the flame is from the wood, it's harder. So it makes an emboss into the metal. And so that's how he created these veneer imprints in metal. Also a nice example of how sort of a machine that's actually made for car doors can create design like this. So, what we'd like to do is, we have a network of designers, and we would like to connect those designers, Dutch designers mainly, European designers also okay, to factories in the United States. And then we will ask them, we make a brief, and they will work together with the factory in the US to create the product for the brand Apparaat. So what we've been doing for the last few weeks, oh, that's a pity. Okay. So this was a really cool video of how springs are being made. We've been visiting all kinds of crazy factories in the US, in High Point, that produce all kinds of things. So a spring factory does not necessarily have to do anything with design, but we are looking for companies that do something different, a little bit outside of the context of design, to see if we can make something magically happen. And we also visited this brick factory, so they make bricks from clay and they fire it. And this is actually an extrusion process. So the clay is being pressed through a die. And this is one of the coolest factories we connected with. I think also the first collection will be made with, in collaboration with this company. And I have an example of what that could be. So you see the brick, right? That's just a brick, but if you think about the technique of how they're making bricks, you can also think of how you could make a piece of furniture with that. So this is by Chris Kabel, by the way. This is not Apparaat, it's just a reference. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more clear, because there's lots of things at play in this process. I'm not even talking about sort of our involvement in the local politics right now, because next week the mayor is, or the future mayor of this town, is visiting us here in Eindhoven. There's a lot of us coming there and doing our business there has sort of like sparked an interest of all kinds of parties in this city. But so the important ingredients in this story is High Point as a city, the furniture market, of course, and then there's the High Point furniture industry, which kind of needs a revitalization, and we might bring that to the table. And then there's Cohab, the building I was talking about, which is owned by John, which is our investor. And that's going to be also our showroom in Cohab, in that building I showed you. So then Apparaat is going to have two different collections. There's going to be a basic collection and a contemporary collection. And we're also going to form an online platform. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So the contemporary collection. This is a semi-annual collection, so I think we will do twice a year. And these are objects that we might produce only 100 from. So it's limited edition. And with this, we hope to be able to start to do every year something different. We see a lot of furniture brands that produce furniture and then sort of like they create an identity and they stick to it for a long time. By doing this, we hope to be able to tap into new trends or zeitgeist that might be happening at that moment, or just a funny opportunity like a brick factory that we might be able to work with. Yeah, that's what I told you. So an example of what this contemporary collection could look like. I could imagine that we say, okay, there's one manufacturer and we invite 5 designers and we connect them to that manufacturer and we have them make a collection with one single technique, for instance. I can also imagine that we write some sort of trend forecast about form language or something in the way things look today, and brief them in that way. The idea is to have this sort of every time a refreshment with the collection, so that we can also communicate that on our channels, that there's something happening around the brand. So these are limited, but if something is very successful and the production price is okay, we might also move that into the basic collection. And the basic collection is a collection that makes cool design based on our design values, also in collaboration with a producing manufacturer, but they are more directed for the hospitality market. So think about dining chairs, you know, or outdoor furniture. Yeah, so we also want to form this platform in which we give the designer more of more attention than sort of the brand in general. So we want to create stories about the designers, how they made it, their ideology. We make a video portrait and an interview, and we follow him along the journey in the process that he does with the manufacturer. We want to post that on the website. Also, we want to give those manufacturers a big role in this, on this platform. We want to explain what they do, how they experience it, what are the challenges for them, and you know, what gets them excited. Then I think it's important to tell the stories about the places. So High Point, we need to create a little bit of a buzz around this city. And then I can imagine that we also talk about a little bit where the material comes from, etc. So basically what I'm trying to say is that we want to communicate very transparently about all of the things that we're doing. So we're going to launch our first collection in September in 2023, and we're going to do co-op building. We're going to do the interior design now. We're building a restaurant, and for that restaurant we are producing or developing products which are also going to be the first collection for Apparaat. That's it. Thank you. Is there any questions? Yes.
So you're starting in September. Is there also something to see during the design week in Eindhoven?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's already very short, and we will be running to get this thing done. And also the interior design is a big task, but yeah, we just want to start as soon as possible. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
What is the main question that you are facing to make it happen?
So the funny thing is that we need the money, and well, there's lots of things I didn't tell you yet, but maybe I can have the opportunity now. So the city of High Point is very interested in having us, so we could actually get a few million to get a factory started ourselves. So that might be a route also to start a factory that does something that's kind of more simple to sell, and then we get funding from that. There is already a start budget, quite large, but we realized that we're going to dry up after a year or so. So we are looking at sort of a side project that can become a milk cow, which we can do over there to sort of create revenue to put into Apparaat. So I think that's our challenge now. I think we can set it up, we can have our first collection, and then then it has to like start rolling quite quickly. So yeah, that's a challenge. I guess a challenge for everybody who's starting a company. How do I start and how do I keep it alive? Is that satisfactory as an answer?
Yeah, not unexpected, I guess. But
No.
I wanted to raise the question because, you know, for some reason people might be in the audience that could help you out with the key question that you have.
Oh yeah,
so.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll come to it.
So in the
In one of your slides, you try to define Dutch design. Dutch
Yeah.
design is not a trademark. Dutch design is not a trademark. So
I'm not
if
sure.
you would define Dutch design as the 3-4 bullets you showed, someone else might come with a different
Oh yeah,
approach.
absolutely.
So then there will be some conflict. How will you deal
So-
with that?
I'm not. We're not. We actually defined Dutch design for us. So the question was from our American colleague, or the idea was to bring Dutch design to America. In order to do that, we had to define what that was, or what that at least meant for us. So, and that created our sort of design values, which we're always going to hold next to everything we are going to design. So for us, it's much more of an internal thing. So I hope not. It's going to create any trouble in that sense.
A second question, maybe an advice, if I dare to say so. You showed one picture of one slide where you had that yellow form with the clock inside.
Yeah,
And you can always put a clock on anything, and then it is something
that's true.
good. So you could also put the clock on the vase, and then the vase becomes a clock. So maybe change that slide.
Maybe it doesn't really make sense to put the clock on the face, but I get your point. I will tell the designer as well. Thank you.
Yeah. I have maybe a related question. So as a layman who is only superficially familiar with Dutch design, I'm very fascinated by your definition because it resonates a lot with me. At the same time, I know that the mainstream in the US has probably a very different cliche about the Netherlands. Huh?
Yeah.
So will this be important for how you explain yourself, for your marketing, or is this indeed, as you just said, just an internal guideline?
Good question.
I have not seen any clocks or windmills or tulips on your...
No. So I think that it's important for us to define our set of rules or what we stand for. I guess there's other people in the Netherlands that have another vision of that, which we talked about. So it's very much an internal thing, but something we cannot avoid is being called the Dutch guys already. Yeah. So it's something that's happening, which we should just roll with, I guess. And in a sense, that market we're tapping into is blue in terms of what they know. And I guess they are not so strongly attached to any of those definitions.
I guess furniture-wise, Rietveld is the only
Yeah.
really well-known.
Yeah, but even in that region, there's the furniture design. It's scary actually how sort of well, look at any American home you see sort of on the television, and those are probably already styled. We are, I think also, well, this is maybe also a nice answer to your question. Our biggest challenge, or something that I'm uncertain of, is how are people going to respond to what we're going to produce there and what we're going to show them. Because now everybody is super excited, you know, and they're like, wow, but will they actually buy it, you know, because they're always enthusiastic, it seems. So that's my kind of worry, and we are, I guess, you know, we try to think about ways of measuring that, you know, sort of like, should we like go to people and ask them if they would buy it or not?
No.
Nah, I feel that we should just go with it and try it.
Yeah. I'm a bit optimistic. I mean, there's this Amish tradition of very simple furniture,
Oh yeah.
which also influenced laws.
Okay.
Yeah? And simplicity is part of your strategy. That's also my association with Dutch. So
Oh yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Huh?
Yeah, and I think, well, the Amish, I don't know if the Amish, but then again, we have our showroom and our manufacturing in North Carolina because we have a good starting place there, and also we want to be part of this mission of putting North Carolina and High Point back on the map as a furniture capital of America. But then again, we sell everywhere in America, so we could sell to the Amish, but it could also be LA, and there's all kinds of different styles there. one thing that I learned is that it's not local at all. John, who is our investor, already has some furniture brands there, and he doesn't sell anything in North Carolina. It all goes to other states. So you are not talking about the region as what they want. You are talking about America and the people who live there, everywhere, what they want. So yeah, it's hard to define sort of what your target group is as you make it into a whole country. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the beginning you said somehow everything needs to be bigger in the US. Are
Yeah.
you going to change your ideas of design or your ideas of Dutch design to accommodate for those
Yeah.
questions or those demands?
Yeah, definitely. We need to do that. That is something. So our investor, like I said, John already has some furniture brands, and he's importing also some Dutch stuff, and that's a nice thing that we have him as our colleague because he knows what works, and he already tried something. He said, okay, the chairs are not wide enough. It's just a simple thing. Also, we might be super interested in having a stainless steel bench. And then the Americans don't want that because it feels cold on their bottoms.
But doesn't that
It's
make
very sort of like if there's no cushioning on your seating, it's not going to fly. There are some rules there that are, even with these kind of chairs that we're sitting on right now, it needs cushioning. And well, we might try and change their mind on that part, but I think we should try to do it on some other areas in terms of aesthetic and then put the cushioning on it to make it work.
But doesn't that make your design less Dutch? If some American for some reason says, I don't want the American stuff, I'll go for that Dutch thing, and he gets Americanized Dutch stuff?
Yeah, I think, no, that's a good question. I think we, at some point, of course, need to sort of do something to fit in somewhere. I think it's not smart to go somewhere and be sort of like an angry child and just do only what you want, somewhere you need to figure out sort of how to get 80% of what you want and then have success with that. I think, or that's at least my idea of how we should approach it.
Probably the most Dutch thing to do.
Yeah, adapt, right? Yeah. But we've got to make sure that we keep all of our values, but then simply make it wider sometimes, and there's all kinds of other situations where things are differently.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, who's going to help you sell it? Is this John guy?
Yeah, that's also John.
So he knows all the different markets around the U.S.
Yeah, so he has 3 furniture brands, which he is, so he's been selling stuff that he's been producing in Indonesia, and it's like a lot of wood kind of stuff, and he's kind of like done with that, so he wants to like move on and do this with us. He has warehousing, showrooms, and like the Co-Hab building I showed you is now for 20% filled. It's huge, so there's lots of other things that can happen there. And there's also, we've been spending time in America. What we notice, we sit in a showroom, and there's like every 15 minutes there's some interior designer walking through that showroom. It's very common for Americans to travel, apparently. So they just take the car and drive for 6 hours to just go for the showroom. So we have confidence that John has the network to get this done, but also we're going to have to do a lot of marketing.
I was just thinking that, like, because it's such a big country, and depending what area of the country you are in, there's very different styles. So I think it's important to like think about what parts of the U.S. the Dutch design will resonate with. For example, like more metropolitan, like cities, and anyway, and rather than trying to fit into like U.S. whatever that means, because there is, even though it is more traditional, I think it's better to like find where you fit in and try to stay true to,
What we do.
as you said, the values.
You are from the US, right? Yeah. What part are you from?
I lived in Michigan. I lived in
Okay.
New York. And yeah, I'm familiar with High Point
Okay.
and North Carolina. I know it is a little bit more of a like traditional state, and I thought High Point. I always thought of High Point furniture as more traditional,
Oh yeah, it is.
but that's why I was wondering, like, if you have a good, sales person who knows
Yeah.
the markets and can connect you well outside of that bubble.
Yeah,
That's
so
important, I think.
that's exactly, yeah, well, that's also, like I explained, this, that John doesn't sell anything in North Carolina. I don't think the North Carolinian people like this, but they might get, at some point get into it. But it's definitely not what we expect, and it's also not what we're aiming for, to get the people there locally to buy our furniture.
But
It's
also,
definitely,
like you said, you're going to have like the collection
yeah,
and then a basic.
the temporary collection, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there I think you can play with it also because like the contemporary collection can be more of your like statement pieces and
Definitely more
I
outspoken.
think you can still maybe bring some of those qualities into the basic collection
Yeah.
that can still, work on some level with like the more general culture.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's the plan. Thank you. No?
Well, thank you for your lovely
Thank you.
presentation, and thank you for answering all of your questions.
I hope it was clear.
I think it absolutely was. And we will have the opportunity to ask him more, or talk to each other more about Dutch design and what it means, how to bring it to other countries, because I want to warmly invite you to have a drink at the bar to further continue the conversation. We'll provide a few snacks. You're free. Please take your glasses with you if you have them here now. We also offer a meal at the meetup table for €19.50, which is generally vegetarian. It will be tonight. I'll come and ask you later if you're interested to stay. Remember, we're here every week, so check out the program for the next couple of weeks. Next week we have an equal table here about water management here in Brabant. Yeah, just enjoy the evening and just feel free to mingle.
Thank you.
Hey, you're still here. So you like the video. If you want, subscribe and click the bell.